if it's okay with everyone, is that oh, that's probably thrown me. We'll do income maximisation first, and then I'll do a little session on grants. And my aim today is to try and demystify the process for everyone, so it's not as confusing as it first seems on the flow of it. So you can ask questions halfway through and at the end. We'll have a little break halfway through as well. And if you want to pop anything in the chat box as we go through, what I'll do is I'll try and get to those as well. And of course, I'll give you our contact details so you can get in touch with us after today's session as well. So it might be that actually as we go through, you've either got experience or maybe you've got thoughts you'd like to share. And of course, a big part of what we do, it's not just about me talking to you, it's about us sharing and learning from each other as well. So we're going to think a little bit now about how we can maximise our income and how we can become more grant savvy. So let's have a little look. So you may have seen this slide before. I always think it's just worth a little mention. Never more so than now, if you or someone you know is struggling to make ends meet at the moment, it's really important to be aware about what help and support is out there. So you will get a copy of these slides sent to you, and as with all of my slides that I do, I embed links in them as well. So you can click the link and it'll take you to the website, and it'll take you to further information, or it'll take you to somewhere where you can find out a little bit more. So we have a webpage here at Carers UK that's dedicated to this sort of thing. So there's a section on income maximisation, and that's one of the sections that we're going to build on in a lot more detail today. There's also a link to a budgeting planning tool, which can be really helpful. So you can get a picture of your household income and outgoings, actually sitting down and looking at, how much money have I got coming in? What am I spending it on? Checking, and this is a really common theme, checking your bank statements, have you got a direct debit you've maybe forgotten about? So really just little things that can be helpful there. And also prioritising essentials. We all need to sit down, and it's the hard fact of life at the moment to actually look and see where we're spending our money, what we're spending our money on, and are we getting the best deals that we can be. So there's information there on managing phone, television and internet bills, how you can access social tariffs, how you can make sure that you're not overpaying. A lot of water companies, for example, if you're in receipt of certain means tested benefits or have household income of less than a set amount, it varies slightly where you are geographically, they can offer you reduced tariffs for your water, for example. And then there's also a section to help you get back on track if you're struggling or have fallen behind with anything. Please don't worry. All of us at some point need to prioritize something over something else. And if that means that we fall a little bit behind with what we needed to unprioritize for a short period of time, there are strategies, there are plans that can help, and there are organizations that can support you during that time as well. Okay. And last but not least, there's a few slides on the end. I won't get to them during this presentation today, but you might want to have a little look at them. So some of them are more top tips for being more energy savvy and energy efficient, never more so topical than now. So things like making sure you're using your energy in the most efficient way, but also just giving you a rough idea of how much things cost to run. I've included some calculators there. They're rough and ready, I've got to be fair, but if you have a rough idea of what kind of device you have and how old your device is and maybe what it uses per hour, you can get a little bit of an idea of how much you're spending, so then you can prioritize what you want to spend your money on. Okay, so let's get to it. So after reviewing your finances and budgets, one of the next things that you need to do is make sure you're not missing out financially. And especially if you've had a significant change to your household income. So we review first, we prioritize, we look at where we're spending our money, what we're spending our money on, and then the next step logically is to say if we can get some more money coming in. Okay, so this is known as income maximisation, or between me, you and the Golden Gate, having a benefit check. So there are some organisations, so one's entitled to, and another one's Child Poverty Action Group, and they keep a track on things like, let me just unmute myself, there we go. demographic, early warning systems, they look at population growth, they look at a knock of economic factors. And one of the things that they've discovered is during the financial year of 2021 to 2022, there were potentially up to £15 billion worth of unclaimed benefits. So the biggest losers in this are working age, low paid workers, so missing out on things like help with housing costs and council tax, people with long-term disabilities and health conditions who are not claiming welfare benefits that they could be claiming, and people who are of state pension age who are not topping up their state pensions to appropriate amounts based on their circumstances. And the Joseph Routine Trust Foundation, for those of you who have maybe heard of that one, showed that approximately 1 in 3 households with a person with a long-term disability or health condition are not receiving any disability benefits. So disability benefits, for those of us who are maybe not familiar, so these are benefits such as attendance allowance if you're over state pension age when you make a claim, personal independence payment if you are between 16 and state pension age when you make a claim, disability living allowance if you are under 16 when you make a claim in England, and if you're in Scotland, you've got your child disability payment and your adult disability payment. Now, if you are already in receipt, it might be that you are on a different benefit for the age group, but that's absolutely fine. Okay, so don't worry, you don't need to change your benefit just because you're now state pension age and you're getting DLA or PIP, for example. So those top-up income payments, so things like pension credit and universal credit are big ones that are underclaimed as well. But it's not just checking to see if you have entitlement, okay? It's also checking to see things like, are they being paid at the appropriate level? Have needs changed since an award was given, for example, of a disability benefit? Are you as a carer receiving a caring linked welfare benefit? And there are quite a few. Some of them don't pay you cash, but they credit you in other ways. So that I'm going to talk a little bit about those. And council tax. Council tax, it's one of those things that so many people are not claiming everything that you're entitled to. So all of these things can be picked up by having a benefit check. I'm going to talk to you different ways about how you can carry out a check and then come and talk to us about the results if you're not quite sure, how you can act on the results as you go through, or we can carry out welfare benefit checks for you, if you are happy or if you would rather that we did that for you. So let me demystify this. Okay, there are a number of programs out there. Okay, you shouldn't pay for any. They're all free online. We have a link on our website to one that's been made by an organisation called Turn to Us. And so there's a link in that slide there as well. Turn to Us are a national charity that help people in financial hardship to gain access to welfare benefits, charitable grants and support services. So there's a range of things that you can apply through this one organisation. But for now, I'm just going to focus on a welfare benefit check. So income maximisation, checking you're not missing out. So I'm going to be honest with you. The information is only going to come out accurate and correct if you put the right information in. Think of it a bit like trying to make a cake. If you don't measure the ingredients, put the right level of ingredients in, put your icing agent in, put all of your ingredients in to follow a recipe, you will not get a nice, light, fluffy, risen cake. Okay, you probably, like me, who have tried to wing it in the past, will get something that's a little bit stodgy, have to put custard on it, and in no way resembles what I was trying to make. So with any financial check, you need to spend a little bit of time being prepared. So you'll have to gather all of your documents, pull together bank statements, any documents outline your existing benefits. You will also need to provide details including housing status. So do you rent? If you rent, who do you rent from? Is it a local authority? Is it a private landlord? Who lives with you? Have you any children? How many bedrooms does your house have? What's your work status? Do you have any long-term disabilities or health conditions? Do you have any caring responsibilities? And all forms of income and savings. So you might find it helpful to use something like a benefit calculator checklist, so you can collect all the information you need. So once you get started, you can save through the process, but once you get started, you have everything there for you. So it can seem really overwhelming to do this, but in general, they are quite straightforward. And if it's identified that you may benefit from having the check carried out by a specialist advisor, so for example, benefit calculators are really good at what they do, but there are some circumstances where the benefit law is complex. So these are sort of special category calculations. So it might be that you're actually referred to come and talk to someone like me. So for example, if you're a student, if you're currently on strike, if you've got no recourse to public funds, recently released from prison, for example, if we've got any share fishermen, agricultural workers, there are different categories where potentially the benefit system works slightly differently for you. But overall, a calculator does two things. It identifies eligibility to means-tested benefits, so things like universal credit, pension credit. And secondly, they indicate possible eligibility, possible eligibility to disability benefits and other forms of help. So things like those disability benefits that I've just mentioned there, but also things like discretionary housing payments, healthy food vouchers, and other things like that I'll talk through in just a little moment. So if you tell the calculator that you're already getting one of these benefits that are marked with an asterisk, then the calculator automatically includes extra amounts in other benefits that may be entitled to you. And what that does is that sometimes you may not actually be entitled to a benefit per se, but with the addition of any extra premiums or extra allowances, then you might be eligible for the first time. So let me just pop this slide on there because I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So all that information that you pop into a calculator, including your date of birth, because they always want to know how old you are, allows a means benefit calculation to be carried out. And what happens is it's done in steps. So the first bit, and this is the reason why you're asked so many questions about people in your household and their circumstances, is that the applicable amount or maximum credit is calculated. So this is made up of elements, allowances, premiums, and additions that the law says apply in your circumstances. So this is almost a theoretical part of the calculation. So this is looking at, so say there's two adults, one is a carer, one has long-term disability and health conditions, there's one child under 18, still in full-time education, you rent a home, it has 2 bedrooms, and you rent it from your local authority. So it works out that we need to have a standard allowance for a couple, we need to have a child element in there, we need to recognise that someone's a carer, we need to recognise that somebody's got long-term disability and health conditions, we need to recognise that they need help with the housing costs because they rent. And all of these different amounts all add up to make something called your maximum amount of benefit entitlement. So that's the first part of the calculation. Based on your circumstances, how much does the government say your household needs to live? Then the next step, so just park that over to one side for a little bit. So the next step, so now the calculator is looking at all forms of income that you have and the savings that you have. How much do you have? What level do you have? So what benefits have you got coming in? Is anyone working? Do you have any interest? Do you have any rental income? Do you have any pensions? So private, occupational or state, for example. And then the next thing that happens is we look to see, can any of these benefits be disregarded, so not counted? So things like child benefits not counted, disability benefits are not counted. Depending on different benefits, there are different types of income that are not counted. But the calculator, first of all, looks straight away at what are the common benefits that are not counted, and then it looks at what's left, and then that is your income figure. Now, the next thing the calculator will do, it will look at the maximum figure. So we're bringing that back over from the side. The maximum figure you would be entitled to minus the income that you have coming in. And so remember, this won't be all of your income because some of your income will be disregarded. So you're still going to be paid it, it's still coming in, but it's not part of this calculation. So that's why you may find that actually you have income from more than one source, more than one DWP department, and maybe from your employer, say. So we take your maximum amount of credit minus your income, then that gives you the maximum amount or entitlement to potential welfare benefits. So this is also the step where we can establish underlying entitlement. So it might actually be that you meet all of the criteria for a particular benefit, but you can't be paid that benefit, but you can still have the disregard or the element or the applicable amount included in your higher calculation. So that first step of that calculation. And we see that a lot with carers allowance when people get to state pension age, or people who are working and who were claiming carers allowance and they are now earning too much for carers allowance, but they earn enough and they're eligible to have universal credit, so they can have the carers element included in universal credit. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes with the calculators. So they're focusing very much on what should your household have coming in, what has your household actually got coming in, and where is going to be the best avenue to top up that income. So that's when we start to look at things like, is it universal credit? Would it be through a disability benefit? Would it be through help with housing costs? Would it be help with council tax support? Or if it's identified that you're eligible for the commonly known means tested benefits, so things like universal credit, what's one of the other ones, pension credit, income-based benefits, so employment and support allowance, income-based job seekers allowance if you've got someone in your household on that. What's the other one? There's no, oh, income support. I was trying to think. And then working tax and child tax credit. These can passport you. So this means automatically link you to other forms of support. So help with council tax, free school meals, help with NHS costs, which I'm going to look at. And this year, the government's cost of living payments were all linked to benefit eligibility. So let me just pop that on for you. So last month, I think it was now, the government made a big announcement about support packages that were going to be applicable and available to people in the next financial year. So from April next year. So this is another reason why carrying out a benefit check, either yourself or getting someone else to do it, is going to be useful sooner rather than later. So not only is it going to make sure that you're not missing out now, when we all could do with a little bit of extra money coming in, but also it'll make sure you don't miss out next year as well. So you can read more about the announcements that were made, but we can hazard our best guess. So the announcement said there was going to be further cost of living payments to the total of £900. These were going to be paid in instalments. They were going to be paid over the financial year. All of the finer details are still to follow. There was going to be a further pensioner payment and a further disability support payment. But in the world of advice, we believe it's generally safe to assume that eligibility will be based on means tested welfare benefits entitlement, benefits that were paid to you on a set date during a period of time, and then you will receive a cost of living payment later on. So it'll follow the same formula as happened this year. We just don't know what those eligibility dates are going to be at this point in time. But it's a fair guess, you know, that is going to happen. And I think it's worth just digressing for for 1 minute or so, just in case anyone's missed it, it was also announced that welfare benefits and pensions from April 2023 were going to be increased by the rate of inflation. So that's 10.1% at that date when that decision was made. What wasn't commonly announced, and you had to do a little bit of rummaging, I'm sure some of you did though, was that carers allowance and disability benefits are also going to be uprated by 10% as well. Every little helps. Okay, so I think it's just being worth aware that actually potentially we've got some extra money coming in April, as well as all of our income that we're going to get. Okay, right, so I'm just going to expand on that past point. Cynthia, I've just seen you in your chat box. I'm going to come to Scotland in just a minute because all 4 nations actually have got different eligibility. Would you believe it? So I've got some key points there that I'm just going to raise, but you're absolutely right. Scotland has put in legislation further information and support to support carers compared to England. Wales has done a couple of little bits and Northern Ireland's doing something completely different, but absolutely. So on the helpline, we get a lot of inquiries from people who are struggling with things like the cost of dentists, the cost of prescriptions, you know, generally being able to look after yourself. As you know, carers allowance in itself isn't a means tested benefit. Okay, it has its own set of eligibility criteria and it can be paid alongside a lot of other benefits, but in itself, it doesn't passport you to any extra help. Within the benefit system, those means tested benefits, so the income supports, the JSAs, the pension credits, the universal credits paid at a certain level, working tax credit, child tax credit, all potentially can passport you to things like free prescriptions, free dental treatment, free NHS eye tests, free wigs, reimbursements of fares to hospital for you or your child. You can also claim for the fares of a companion who needs to travel with you for medical reasons. We get asked a lot about travel costs. So if that person's in receipt of one of these benefits, then potentially, you know, there is help with NHS costs through the passported route. Okay, so you've got to be getting a benefit to be passported to free help with NHS costs. If you don't get one of these passported benefits yet, maybe you will, but currently you don't, there are other ways that you can qualify for either full help or partial help towards NHS health costs. So there are a number of different schemes here. So there's the low income scheme. So you can apply for the scheme if your savings, investments or property, so not including the house you live in, you know, don't exceed a certain amount. And if you're in a care home, if you have savings of less than £23,250, so potentially there could be help and support there. £16,000 for everyone else, and if you're aged over 60, of course, you can gain free prescriptions and NHS eye tests regardless of your income. But I know for a lot of us that actually our income isn't quite low enough, and maybe we haven't looked at means tested benefits yet, or maybe we don't have any entitlement currently to means tested benefits. But for those of you who are not aware, and I think probably some of you are, and maybe you want to share how these work for you. If you're in England, because of course there's different rules apply to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland when it comes to prescriptions. If you don't receive free prescriptions, you can buy a prescription prepayment certificate. So these can be quite cost effective. So you can get a 3-month or a 12-month prepayment prescription certificate, and it will cover all of your prescriptions for that period. So no matter how many you need. And I know from my own experience that actually people with long-term disabilities and health conditions, they need quite a few different medications. So each prescription costs £9.35. But if you've got one of these prepayment certificates, it would be £30.25 for 3 months, or £108.10 for 12 months. So you can pay 10 monthly instalments if you get a 12-month prepayment certificate, But basically, if you have 4 or more prescription items in 3 months, or 12 or more prescription items in 12 months, it might be cheaper for you to look at getting a prepayment certificate. What you can do if you are either applying for one or you are going to be applying for a welfare benefit that's going to be backdated, is that ask the chemist to give you a receipt, so that they fill out quite a big form, and then you can claim back the cost of your prescription from there. Okay, I'll just pause there. I'll come to this next slide, and then I can see someone's got their hand up, so I'll come to that in just 1 second. So as we're probably aware, depending on where you are and one of the 4 nations, the NHS is structured very differently. So find out about health cost helps in each nation. There's links there just for you to click through, because I know Scotland and Wales, for example, you don't pay for prescriptions. So it's worth just clicking through there. There are wider benefits and grants that, depending on your circumstances, all carers should look at. Okay, so the most commonly known one is the one of carers allowance. Now, carers allowance has its own unique, and I say unique because there is no other benefit like it in the benefit system. There's currently around about 57 active benefits, eligibility criteria. So if you are caring for someone for 35 hours a week or more, they are in receipt of a disability benefit, and you work if you have earnings of under £132 a week, or you have a personal or occupational pension that comes in. With this particular benefit, there is no limit on any savings. The earned income figure, so the £132 a week, is based purely on income from employment or self-employment. So you work, you get paid, and that is what the earning limit is in relation to. There are different factors that go around carers allowance. So it's paid either weekly or monthly, but it also does allow for a carers element or a carers addition or a carers premium to be included in other welfare benefits. So if you're not eligible to be paid carers allowance because you either earned too much, or you maybe are not paying national insurance on those earnings, or you're caring for 1, 2 or 3 people rather than just one person, but you're caring for a minimum of 20 hours a week or more, then you might want to look a little bit more about carers credit. So carers credit doesn't give you any money, okay, but it will give you a credit or a stamp on your national insurance record. So for those of you who are maybe not getting stamps from any other sources, so your national insurance record, it does a number of things, but the main thing that a lot of us focus on is when we get to retirement age and how much our state pension is going to be. So carers credit can allow a stamp towards your state pension, even though you are not actually receiving any money. So it's sort of an underlying entitlement there. And with carers allowance and carers credit, if you are in education, for example, you might not be able to be paid carers allowance. You could still claim carers credit, but it's also worth talking to the educational establishment, so the college or the university, and just let them know that you have caring responsibilities. Now, the definition of caring responsibilities is quite broad. There is no absolute definition of who is a carer and what are caring responsibilities. Depending on who you are trying to show you are a carer to. So, for example, the welfare benefit system, if you're showing them that you're a carer, then the welfare benefit system is quite set in its ways. And it will only acknowledge that you are caring to someone if the person you're caring to has had an assessment and receives the disability benefit. So it might be that the starting point is actually the person who you are providing care and support to look to see if they're eligible for a disability benefit. They go through that process. The welfare benefit system acknowledges that they have a need for help because of their own circumstances, and so therefore it is appropriate that a carer helps them. So that could be a way that you get an extra carers premium or addition, or you are paid carers allowance or the carers element, for example. as we've just mentioned, there are different carers grants that are paid in each of the different nations. So, for example, in Wales, there was a £500 carers grant that was paid to people who were in receipt of carers allowance. It was paid earlier on this year. Application for that's now closed, which is why I haven't mentioned it on this particular presentation. But if you are in Wales, you might want to keep an eye out for it next year. Indicators are that it's going to happen again. So it was round about the beginning of the financial year. You made an application and the payments were made in June. It closed in September. If you live in Scotland and you are in receipt of carers allowance, so you actually claim it and you're paid it, then there's extra payments that are made twice a year. So the next payment that's coming up, so if you were receiving carers allowance on the 10th of October 2022, from the 9th of December, so that's just this weekend coming up, you will be receiving a payment of £245.70. It's an extra payment. It doesn't have any impact on any other benefits that you may be receiving, and that's on top of any of the other UK government-wide schemes that you may be getting. There's also a summer payment that's paid as well, that if you're in Scotland. And if you are a young carer that lives in Scotland, so if you're 16, 17 or 18, there's a young carers grant. It's a yearly grant of £326.65, for example, that's made. So there are other things that you could apply for depending on where you are in the 4 nations. I'm very conscious that England is not quite as generous to carers as Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland, I think it's fair to say, but that has been part of a much wider campaign, I can promise you. So watch this space, watch this space. Okay, I'm going to cover one more thing, and then what we'll do is we'll have a break. So one of the most common things we see on the helpline is people who are paying more council tax than they should be. So there are a number of ways in which you might be able to get help with the council tax bill, and it might be that actually you can get help from one or more of these different schemes. So the easiest thing to do as an initial starting point is have a look on the website, download the appropriate fact sheet or rate relief fact sheet for your nation, because as you would expect, the rules are slightly different. There are some common themes though, so I'm going to just pick over some of the common themes that we can have a little look at. So as we're probably all aware, council tax is a local form of taxation on domestic properties. It's collected by local councils, and they're often referred to as local authorities. The person or people who own or rent the home are legally responsible, are legally responsible for paying the council tax. If 2 people jointly own or have a joint tenancy, they're both responsible for the bill, although only one bill will be sent to the home. So one person will be named first, one person will be named second. In terms of liability, if there are any issues, the liability will be sought after from the first person named on the bill, then the second. For those of you, maybe a second on the bill, but you never know. So the most commonly known scheme, and it varies in name, but in essence, it's council tax benefit, council tax reduction, council tax support. So these are benefit schemes that reduce the amount of council tax you pay because you're on a low income. Okay, so this means that they do that calculation. They look at how much income you have coming in. They look at your wider circumstances. They do a little calculation and then they work out if you're entitled to any council tax support. Okay, so a lot of people are not claiming what they're entitled to because they actually think their income's too high. It isn't true. Okay, low income isn't what you think it is. You know, there are differentiations between household incomes, and it's purely based on your circumstances. Who lives in the household, for example? If you're in Scotland, there's something called the second adult rebate. England and Wales don't offer this particular rebate. So this is a rebate to working age people as part of their council tax schemes. And so it can give you a reduction if you have a second adult in your property. Scotland is the only nation that does that. For England and Wales, for example, they're almost the opposite. If you're a sole occupier, then you would get a 25% discount on your bill. So it's worth just looking at a rebate, especially if you're in Scotland, so a second adult rebate. There are some exemptions. So exemptions are particularly useful to know if you're in a caring role. So if you've left the property empty, so you had your own home, you need to go and move in with your parents because they need your care and support. You've left your main home, your home where you live, empty. Then you can claim a property exemption for council tax on your house, as long as you were the only resident in your home, or there are a few other circumstances that may come into play. But basically, you have moved your main residence to another residence to provide care. So that person could need care due to old age. Maybe they've got long-term disabilities or health conditions. Maybe they're drug or alcohol dependent, or maybe they need support with their mental health. So that's worth knowing. If you have to leave your house empty because you need to move to support someone and it is no longer where you are living, it can be for a short period of time, it could be for a long period of time, you can apply for a council tax exemption. You can also apply for a council tax exemption if the property has been left empty by someone who is now resident in a hospital, a care home, or a hostel where personal care is provided. So it could be that your person you provided care for, so for the sake of argument, my mum lived on her own. When she went into hospital, she was in hospital for a long time. I let the local authority know that the house was empty because she was in hospital, and she didn't have to pay council tax during that period. Her home was empty because she was in hospital. Okay, it was a long-term stay. It wasn't a temporary hospital stay. But if she's going to be there for long term, so if you stay more than 28 days, so on, that seems to be quite long term. So there are some other exemptions that you might want to have a little look at, but I'm going to cover some of those in discounts. So I'll just move on to discounts, I think, in just a second. The disability reduction scheme is one where the property is substantially excuse me, adapted. So if an adult or child who lives in the property is substantially and permanently disabled, and as a result of that disablement or a need, one of the following additions has been provided in the household. So an additional bathroom or kitchen in the property is needed, which is used by the disabled person. There is a room other than a bathroom, kitchen or toilet, which is needed and mainly used by a disabled person. Or there is enough space in the property for the disabled person to use a wheelchair indoors. So if they've adapted the property, you've had wider door frames put in, for example, in all doors, then potentially look at a disability reduction scheme. Okay. There is no general test here about health conditions and who would be substantially and permanently disabled. So if a person is registered with your local authority, if they do this, that should be enough to satisfy this condition. There could also be clarification if an extra room is required, that is additional, and what would not be required if that person was not disabled. So essentially what will happen is if it is seen that your house has been adapted because of that person that you're supporting, so extra width door frames, for example, you can get a reduction to your council tax bill. So if you were band B, for example, it will go down to band A. If you're already in band A, then you will get a reduction of 1/6 of the bill. 1/6 of the bill might not sound like much, but actually, as we already know, all of these things make a difference. If they're putting a lift in, Michael, have a look and see. You never know. That might be. To be fair, it's proving an adaptation. So I think that generally could be one you could argue. And if you are struggling to pay council tax, they have a pot of money. It's a discretionary pot of money, so they use it at their own discretion. These funds may fall under different names, such as resident support scheme or hardship funds. Your local council tax department will have details of them. When you apply for any sort of discretionary fund, you need to give them details about your circumstances. So your finances in and your finances out, for example. Okay. I can see Jane's popping in some links into the chat box, which I hope everyone's finding helpful. Dorothy, I can see your hand up. I'll come to you in just 1 minute, if that's okay. So this is the big one. Let's go back to discounts, as this is one of the main areas we find is substantially underclaimed. So council tax bills, let's look a little bit about how they're made up. Council tax bills are generally based on the assumption that there are at least 2 adults living in a property. So the bill will not increase if there's more than 2 adults. However, if only 1 person or no one lives in the property or is treated as such, a discount can be applied to the bill. Now, we like discounts, okay? So the following examples are categories of people who are disregarded, who are not treated as living in the property when it comes to calculating council tax. So we've got carers, but before we all get excited, I'm going to tell you what the definition of a carer is for council tax purposes. Okay, we've got carers. We've got people who are classed as severely mentally impaired. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that one. It's not a very appropriately fitting name, I think, but what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about these ones because these are the 2 who we see a lot coming through. Children under the age of 18 or aged 18 if child benefit is still in payment. So a child is never counted as an adult in a property until they turn 18, and then they can still be disregarded or not counted if they are, if you are, or they are, someone is receiving child benefit for them. Full-time students don't pay council tax. So those who just said before, what benefits can I get from a full-time student? You can be disregarded for council tax purposes. Okay. If the property is occupied by only students, then it is exempt from council tax altogether. Okay. Maureen, I know council tax doesn't apply to Northern Ireland. I'm going to put a link into rates relief. Very happy to talk to you about that if you have a particular question. The next bit about grants that I do after we have our break, that is in relation to grants nationwide. So you might want to hang around, but if not, please feel free to have a look through the slides and come back to the advice line if you have any questions. Okay. If you're a long-term hospital patient or care home resident, as we've just spoken about there, you can have a disregard. If you have a live-in care worker, so if you have someone who is paid either by the local authority or by you via a direct payment scheme to live in with you to provide care and support, because their main household isn't your household because they live somewhere else basically, and they're living in maybe part-time, then potentially they will be disregarded from your house because they're paying council tax somewhere else. Okay, let's have a little look. I've just got, do students apply to mature full-time students? Yes, it does. Get in touch with your local authority. So if you can get a disregard for your council tax. And people living in a hostel which provides care or treatment because of their age, physical or mental disabilities, past or present drug or dependence, or past or present mental illnesses. So these people can all be disregarded. Okay, it's not exhaustive. Local authorities do have other categories as well. But generally, if 1 or more people can be disregarded, then you would get a 25% discount. If after taking into account disregarded people, there are no residents who would count, then a 50% discount is applied. Although if a property is seen to be occupied solely by someone who would meet the definition of someone who was severely and mentally impaired, then that property could be exempt from council tax completely. Okay, so there's quite a lot at stake here, if I'm perfectly honest. So let's move on to care carers disregard. So as I've said, on the basic assumption that there's 2 adults, if you have 2 adults and another adult moves in to provide care, then let's look to see if we can potentially get a caring disregard applied to that. Okay, so to be disregarded as a carer, you must meet all of the following criteria. You must live in the same property as the person you provide care for. You must provide care for at least 35 hours a week. And this is the one. You must not be the spouse or partner of the person you care for or their parent if you care for a child under 18. So if we do the child under 18, a child under 18 isn't counted for council tax purposes anyway, but the minute they turned 19, if you were a parent carer, you could claim a carer's disregard for looking after your child. If you are providing care and support to your parent or other relative or a sibling who were all adults, then you could claim a carer's disregard. You can't claim a carer's disregard if you're providing care and support to your spouse or partner, I'm afraid. The person you provide care for must also be getting one of our well-known now disability benefits. What's interesting here though is that you don't have to claim carer's allowance to qualify for this discount, and your income and savings will not affect your eligibility. Okay, and if there is more than one carer in the property, then can both be disregarded for council tax purposes, as long as they individually meet the criteria. So what might be more beneficial, and it's going to depend on your wider household circumstances, is that there's another category. So this category is defined as if someone in the household has a severe mental impairment, so severely mentally impaired. So severe mental impairment, so you would need to have a certificate from a registered medical practitioner confirming that they have a health condition that impacts your ability to think, feel, any sort of cognitive functions. So severe mental impairment itself is the medical diagnosis. So it's the umbrella term of a lot of more commonly known health conditions. So it could be things like dementia, including Alzheimer's. It could be profound learning difficulties. It could be the result of a severe stroke or something else. You know, so if your cognitive functions are impaired, then looking to see if you can get a GP to confirm this. So through a diagnosis, through a statement, they fill out a form. And also you need to be in receipt of one of those specified benefits. Slightly different which level you need, but there is a lot of regulatory checks on that because some local authorities were not applying the legislation correctly. So if you have applied for it and you were turned down, it's worth just getting in touch with us because a lot of local authorities weren't doing it correctly. So if taking into account that you can get one person disregarded, so there's only one resident in the property, you would get a 25% discount as a link to some examples there. As I've mentioned, if there are no residents you would count for council tax bill, a 50% discount is applied. However, you would then look to see, can I actually get this property exempt? So if a property can be deemed as an exempt, then it is free from council tax. Okay. Now, with all of these discounts and disregards, you have to apply to your local authority and always ask for backdating because they can go back to the beginning of time in most circumstances. So, for example, if your sibling or your parents, you moved in or they moved in with you and you've been providing care to them, actually you could look at getting your carers disregarded, apply to your council tax bill since the day they moved in or you moved in with them, as long as you had a disability benefit and payment, which sometimes can be thousands of pounds previous that you would get back because you've already paid that council tax, or moving forward, you know, it could be applied to your bills, whichever you would prefer. Right, I'm just going to go through grants and then I will take any questions because I don't want any of you to miss out on my next our next session on demystifying charitable grants. So there is help out there to buy things like white goods, so such as fridges, cookers, carpets, washing machines, other household items, beds, bedding, um, funding available for short breaks, equipment, technology. There's funding out there for all sorts, but like everything, if you don't know where to look, it can be impossible to access or claim for. So there is a grant search tool. Lots of organisations have them. I like the turn to us ones because actually it's simple, it's not confusing, and it actually gives really clear and simple and follow. But have a look at some of the other ones. Each one has slightly different organisations. So think of it a bit like compare the market, but we're comparing grants that are out there. So charitable funds are given from a wide range of sources. So they could be from big organisations to private donations to local charities that have been set up. They could be given as money, products or services. They don't have to be paid back. They might give you a monthly allowance. They could provide help towards a certain thing. But to apply for a grant, you need to meet the eligibility rules of that particular fund. There. I can hear quite a lot of noise. Is that my microphone or is that someone else's? I hope it's not mine. Okay, there we go. Is that mine? No. Okay, it's gone anyway. So fingers crossed you can hear me a little bit better now. Okay, so let's have a little look about how we can demystify these. So you open up the grant search that you're particularly doing. And one of the things that you need to think about now is what is it that I'm applying for? So in the back of your mind, you will have more success if you are applying for a particular item. So you need a fridge, or you need some bedding, or you need help with your TV license, or your laptop's broken. Okay, so have an item in mind. So the next thing you need to think about is how much is this item going to cost? So do your cost analysis, find out, have a look on Argos, Currys, have a look at one of the websites, so you get a refined idea of cost. Then you will be asked to put in details of your basic information. So things like how old you are, where you live, your gender, your name, for example. And then you will given the option to fill out additional details. So additional details, so things like any previous occupations you or family members have had, details of any health conditions, energy and water providers, any religion or nationality, information that you're happy to share. So a lot of grants are given on the basis of work you maybe did in the past or work you do, or if you have a particular health condition or providing care to someone who has a particular health condition. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. So it could be if you're caring for a child or you're caring for an older person. It could be that you live in there's a little town up near where I live. It's called Morpeth. Okay, somebody a few years ago left their estate to be shared out in a number of charitable grants each year to families who lived in a particular area of Morpeth. So if they wanted help and support, they wanted to give back to their very, very local community. If you've ever worked or any of your family members have ever worked in hospitality, okay, so you've worked in pubs, restaurants, cafes, bars, hotels, organisation called Hospitality Action provides one-off payments, and they can provide monthly payments as well. It could be that actually you apply to a charity based on a particular health condition. So things like Macmillan, they provide grants not just for heating, but for cost of travel, warm clothing, bedding, for example. There are lots of different things there. The Family Fund is another charitable organisation that provides help and support for families who are looking after disabled children. There are extra sections for if you're in Scotland, if you're in Wales, if you're in Northern Ireland. So looking at charitable organisations that will provide grants only to particular areas. There's the British Legion, there's SAFA, there's Ministry of Food, what's called if you're a fisherman, I can't remember the Fisherman's Alliance, you know, if you're an agricultural worker. But also if you are a dependent family member, so it could be one of your parents or one of your children, you know, these charities will support you as well. So these are extra lines of support that you can go through, as well as having a carer's assessment or a parent carer's assessment, or looking at a disability facilities grant, all of those things I've talked about before. This is something slightly different. So a couple of top tips here. So it's worth doing a search for yourself, then doing another search in your partner's name, if you've got a child or an adult you're caring for, as you might get different research results for each particular search. And this one, it is very hard, if not virtually impossible, to apply for a grant retrospectively. So you bought something, then try and apply for the grant. Virtually impossible to get that money back. Apply for the grant first, then buy the item, because a big part of getting the grant is actually showing that you received the money and you got the receipt. And then those two things went together, or in some circumstances, the charity or organisation who are distributing the grant will pay the company direct. You know, so you might never see the money, you know, they pay it direct, you know, for example. And you could also get other kinds of support. So the Household Support Fund provides a range of different vouchers and grants that covers all sorts depending on where you are in England. Discretionary Advice Fund in Wales, and urgent help from your local council if you live in Scotland. Okay, so there's a lot of different things that we've got going on there as well. So check out your local council's website and the Carers UK, your local trust as well if you're in Northern Ireland, for local carers organisations, and your local council social services departments, because there are pots of money that are available there as well. So a lot of local carer centres, for example, will give out grants once a year to people who are registered. The general eligibility criteria tends to be that you spend the money that you get on yourself. There's no link to household income, no link to anything. You just need to be registered with them. So again, if you've got a small item that you need, potentially, have a look on there. And look at local support groups as well. So things like Alzheimer's societies, Macmillan Cancer Support, condition-specific charities as well. If you go to their websites, join their support groups, they can also provide not only physical and practical help, but also monetary support as well. I know the MS Society, for example, helped fund a mobility scooter for somebody who had progressive MS, whose mobility was severely restricted, and they helped fund a mobility scooter, you know, for that particular person. So there are different ways out there. And those of you who are looking in particular for help with heating costs over and above, just a couple of extra links on there. There's a lot of different schemes that are coming into effect from the local governments. There's also Disability Rights UK. And this one just opened on the 26th of September, so I think it's just worth a quick mention for those of you who haven't had a chance to mention it before. To eligible households in Wales will get a one-off £200 cash payment to put towards the cost of heating their homes. Carers allowance is one of the qualifying benefits for this particular scheme, and this is paid in addition to the fuel payments offered by the UK government. Applications can be made to local authorities via their website. That scheme has currently opened. I know a lot of people didn't know, so I'm just giving it a shout out there.